There's a plant growing in your garden right now with a white powdery coating on its leaves that contains 232% of your daily vitamin, a requirement in a single serving. 3 times more calcium than spinach. Twice the riboflavin. Triple the vitamin C. It was deliberately cultivated by Native Americans for 3,500 years before corn even existed in North America. Ancient peoples ground its seeds into flour to survive winters. Medieval Europeans called it a famine food because when everything else failed, this plant kept them alive. The herbicide industry makes $293 billion a year convincing you it's your enemy. At archaeological sites across North America, researchers have found seeds dating back 3,500 years. Not scattered randomly through debris, stored deliberately, preserved carefully, protected in clay vessels alongside the foods that sustain civilizations. Chenopodium berlanderi was one of the earliest agricultural crops grown in North America, predating corn cultivation by 1,500 years. Native peoples across the eastern woodlands grew this plant intentionally, selecting the best seeds each season, improving it generation by generation. This wasn't a weed they tolerated. This was a crop they perfected. By the time European settlers arrived, they found fields of it growing alongside squash and beans, cultivated as carefully as any modern farmer tends their vegetables. This is Lambsquarters, the plant that solved a nutritional crisis your grandparents understood and your generation was taught to destroy. The white coating on its leaves isn't dirt, it's not disease. It's a waxy crystalline layer the plant produces as protection, and when you hold a leaf under running water, that coating causes water to bead up in iridescent droplets. The plant's scientific name references its shape. Chenopodium album, white goosefoot, because the leaves resemble the webbed foot of a goose. One plant can produce up to 75,000 seeds, not by accident, not through random chance. Through evolutionary perfection designed to ensure humans never go hungry. But somewhere between your great-grandmother's garden and your local garden center, Lambsquarters transformed from essential food to public enemy. Walk into any hardware store and you'll see it featured prominently on herbicide labels, its distinctive diamond-shaped leaves marked with red X's. Agricultural extension services publish elimination strategies. Universities categorize it as a troublesome weed requiring aggressive management. The University of California recommends multiple herbicide applications for total eradication. Not once do these guides mention that compared to spinach, Lambsquarters has about 2 times more vitamins B1 and B2 and 3 times more vitamin C and calcium. The transformation happened deliberately. After World War II, chemical companies that had manufactured explosives and poison gas needed new markets. They found them in agriculture. They created herbicides specifically designed to kill broadleaf plants like Lambsquarters while leaving grass unaffected, perfect for the emerging suburban lawn aesthetic. They manufactured the idea that a healthy yard contains only one plant species, that biodiversity represents failure, that having the most nutritious wild plant in North America growing free in your garden is a problem requiring chemical warfare. And they succeeded so completely that 3 generations later, people see Lambsquarters and feel revulsion instead of recognition. Look at what you're being taught to eliminate. Research comparing wild edible plants to cultivated vegetables found that Lambsquarters has more than twice as much potassium, 5 times as much magnesium, and 3 times as much calcium as lettuce, spinach, and cabbage. The protein content exceeds cultivated greens. The mineral density surpasses anything in your produce aisle. A 1-ounce serving of raw Lambsquarters provides 65% of your daily vitamin A and 37% of your vitamin C. That's more vitamin C than oranges by weight, more vitamin A than carrots, more calcium than milk. And unlike those cultivated foods that require tilling, fertilizing, watering, and protecting from pests, Lambsquarters grows itself. It appears unbidden each spring. It thrives in poor soil where other plants struggle. It survives drought. It tolerates heat. It produces abundantly without any human intervention whatsoever. You can pay $5 for a container of organic spinach shipped 2,000 miles. Or you can harvest the more nutritious plant growing in your yard for free. The lawn care industry desperately hopes you choose the former. But the nutrition is just the surface. The deeper revelation involves what Lambsquarters represents, ancestral wisdom systematically erased through corporate marketing. 4,000 years ago, Native Americans in the eastern woodlands cultivated Lambsquarters as their primary grain crop. They didn't have access to modern nutritional analysis. They couldn't measure vitamin content or mineral density. They simply observed what kept them healthy, what sustained them through winter, what allowed their communities to thrive. They watched Lambsquarters and recognized its value with a clarity that modern science has only recently begun to validate. Ancient Native American communities harvested the seed heads, hung them over hides to dry, and ground the seeds into flour. One large plant easily produces a cup of seeds. Those seeds, when ground and cooked, create a stew that archaeologists believe was one of the most common dishes consumed in the Midwest 2,000 years ago. The taste, according to those who have recreated traditional recipes, resembles a cross between quinoa and turnip greens. Hearty, earthy, sustaining. This was the food that built the mound cities that sustained the complex societies that flourished across North America long before European contact. Then corn arrived from Central America around 1600 BC. Corn produces a massive harvest all at once, making it easier to store and process. But corn is nutritionally inferior to lambsquarters. When corn replaced lambsquarters as the primary crop, archaeological evidence shows increased dental caries and Harris lines in human skeletal remains, physical markers of nutritional stress. The convenience of corn came at the cost of human health. Ancient peoples made that trade knowingly, choosing efficiency over nutrition. Modern humans made no choice at all. We simply forgot lambsquarters existed. Europe tells the same story. During both world wars, when food became scarce and supply chains collapsed, lambsquarters reappeared in European diets. Victory gardens grew it deliberately. Rationing cookbooks featured recipes for its preparation. People who had dismissed it as a weed during abundance recognized its value during scarcity. The plant that kept medieval peasants alive during famines became the plant that kept industrial populations fed during wartime. Then peace returned, supply chains rebuilt, supermarkets filled with produce, and lambsquarters disappeared again, relegated back to weed status, forgotten until the next crisis. This cycle reveals something uncomfortable about modern food systems. We only value lambsquarters when we're desperate. We only recognize its worth when everything else fails. The rest of the time, we spray it with poison. The herbicide angle goes deeper than lawn aesthetics. Lambsquarters is identified by farmers and researchers as one of the most common and troublesome weeds in North American corn, spring-seeded cereals, and early planted broadleaf crops. At high densities, it can reduce corn and soybean yields. This is the justification for its elimination: economic competition with industrial agriculture. But this framing erases a crucial question. Why are we growing nutritionally inferior crops and eliminating the superior ones? Corn has less protein than lambsquarters, less calcium than lambsquarters, less vitamin A, less vitamin C, less iron than lambsquarters. Soybeans, while high in protein, require extensive processing to become edible and contain antinutrients that interfere with mineral absorption. Lambsquarters can be eaten raw or cooked, requires no processing, and delivers bioavailable nutrition immediately. We're spending billions of dollars, millions of acres, and massive chemical inputs to grow inferior foods while systematically eliminating the superior food growing wild. The economic absurdity is matched only by the environmental devastation. Modern industrial agriculture requires chemical fertilizers derived from fossil fuels, pesticides that poison pollinators and soil microbiomes, massive irrigation systems that deplete aquifers, and monocultures that destroy biodiversity. Lambsquarters requires none of this. It improves soil by bringing nutrients from deep root zones to the surface. It provides habitat for beneficial insects. It survives on rainfall alone in most climates. It's one of the most ecologically beneficial plants you can have in your landscape, but it competes with corn, so it must die. Look at the language used to describe lambsquarters in agricultural literature. Troublesome, aggressive, invasive, requires management. These are the same terms military strategists use to describe enemies. Lambsquarters isn't just unwanted. It's framed as an active threat requiring systematic elimination. Agricultural extension services recommend pre-emergent herbicides to prevent germination, post-emergent herbicides to kill seedlings, and multiple applications throughout the growing season to ensure complete eradication. The goal isn't control, it's extinction. And homeowners are taught to participate in this extinction using the same language and the same chemicals, convinced that having this plant in their yard represents personal failure. The taste excuse emerges next. Lambsquarters is bitter, people say. It tastes like dirt. This is psychological conditioning, not reality. Lambsquarters has a mild, slightly mineral-rich flavor similar to spinach. Young leaves eaten raw taste like tender lettuce with a hint of earthiness. Cooked leaves taste exactly like spinach, which is why traditional cuisines from India to Mexico to Europe used lambsquarters interchangeably with spinach in any recipe. The plant became known as bacon weed in parts of America because cooking it in bacon fat creates a dish so delicious it converted even those who claim to hate wild foods. The tastes like dirt response is learned behavior. Children raised eating McDonald's and Skittles find any vegetable bitter. Adults whose palates have been hijacked by processed foods high in sugar, salt, and fat find real food bland. This isn't lambsquarters' problem. This is civilization's problem. We've trained ourselves to reject the foods our bodies need and crave the foods that slowly kill us. But here's what nobody mentions when they dismiss lambsquarters as inedible. Michael Pollan, one of America's most respected food writers, calls lambsquarters and purslane two of the most nutritious plants in the world. Chefs in progressive cities now forage it specifically for high-end restaurant dishes, charging $20 for plates featuring the same plant homeowners pay to eliminate. Farmers markets sell foraged lambsquarters at premium prices. Whole Foods stocks it seasonally when suppliers can find it. The same cultural tastemakers who dictate food trends have rediscovered what your great-grandmother knew. This plant is valuable, but recognition grows slowly. Too slowly. Because every summer, millions of Americans spend hundreds of dollars and dozens of hours eliminating the most nutritious plant in their landscape to maintain a grass monoculture that produces nothing, feeds nothing, and serves no purpose beyond demonstrating conformity to a manufactured aesthetic created by chemical companies 60 years ago. The practical application is immediate. Lambsquarters germinates in early spring when soil warms. Look for seedlings with distinctive long narrow cotyledons with purple undersides. As the plant matures, it develops alternating diamond-shaped leaves with that characteristic white powdery coating. Harvest when plants are young and tender before they reach full height. Cut the top 6 to 8 inches of the plant, leaving the roots intact so it regenerates. Rinse thoroughly to remove the waxy coating and any soil. Add raw to salads like you would spinach. Sauté with garlic and olive oil. Add to omelets, quiche, soups, stir-fries, pasta dishes, anywhere you'd use spinach or chard. The flavor is mild enough to blend into smoothies where fruit dominates. The texture holds up better than spinach when cooked, maintaining a pleasant firmness rather than wilting into mush. Traditional preparations include Indian sog dishes, Mexican verduras, European peasant stews, and American Southern-style greens cooked with onions and vinegar. If you let plants mature fully, harvest the seed heads in late summer. Strip seeds by hand or cut the entire seed head and hang it over a sheet to dry. The tiny black seeds can be ground into flour, cooked like quinoa, or sprouted for even higher nutrient density. One plant produces 75,000 seeds. You're not harvesting a vegetable, you're harvesting abundance measured in multiples of thousands. But the herbicide industry doesn't want you to make that connection. They want you to see 75,000 seeds as an invasion requiring pre-emergent chemical warfare. They want you terrified of abundance. They want you dependent on grocery stores, on supply chains, on the industrial food system they profit from. They want you convinced that having free, nutritious food growing in your yard without any effort on your part is a problem. And they've succeeded so thoroughly that people now voluntarily poison themselves and their families to eliminate the plant that could feed them. The health implications are severe. The herbicides marketed for lambsquarters control contain 24D, dicamba, glyphosate, and other compounds linked in peer-reviewed studies to increased cancer risk, hormone disruption, neurological damage, and reproductive problems. These chemicals don't disappear after application. They persist in soil, contaminate groundwater, drift into neighboring properties, enter your home on shoes and pet paws, and appear weeks later in the food you grow and the water your children drink. You are paying to poison yourself to eliminate food. The economic and health absurdity would be incomprehensible if it weren't so commonplace. But the deeper issue is epistemological. How do we know what's valuable? For 3,500 years, humans knew lambsquarters was essential because they observed results. People who ate it thrived. Communities that cultivated it prospered. That knowledge passed through generations, validated continuously through lived experience. Then in the span of 15 years, between 1945 and 1960, corporate marketing erased that knowledge, not through evidence. Not through science, through repetition of a simple message. This plant is a weed. The modern response is to demand scientific validation. Show me the studies, people say, prove it's nutritious, but the studies exist. Multiple research institutions have documented that Lambsquarters contains 232% of daily vitamin A needs, triple the calcium of spinach, 5 times the magnesium of lettuce, and higher protein content than cultivated greens. The evidence is overwhelming. People don't lack information. They lack permission. They've been so thoroughly conditioned to view Lambsquarters as a weed that no amount of nutritional data can overcome the psychological programming. This is the power of narrative. This is what happens when corporations successfully colonize consciousness. You can show people that Lambsquarters is more nutritious than kale, and they'll still spray it with herbicide because that's what they've been taught good homeowners do. The identity performance of maintaining a perfect lawn overrides rational self-interest. But some people are remembering. Indigenous communities who never forgot are teaching traditional preparation methods. Foragers are sharing knowledge through social media. Permaculture practitioners are deliberately planting Lambsquarters in food forests. Homesteaders are saving seeds. The knowledge is spreading again, person by person, despite corporate resistance. And the plant itself refuses to be eradicated. Lambsquarter seeds can remain dormant in soil for years, germinating when conditions are favorable. You can spray, you can till, you can pull. You can wage chemical warfare season after season. And every spring, Lambsquarters returns. It returns because it evolved alongside humans. It adapted to disturbed soil because humans create disturbed soil everywhere we live. It thrives in gardens because that's where humans need nutrition most. It produces 75,000 seeds per plant because it's trying to ensure you never go hungry. Lambsquarters isn't invading your garden. It's responding to an invitation encoded in your agriculture, in your tilling, in your presence. The plant is trying to feed you. It's been trying for 3,500 years. The only question is whether you're ready to accept what it's offering. Every Lambsquarters plant in your yard is a test. Will you recognize ancestral wisdom when it appears unbidden? Will you accept abundance growing free? Or will you reach for poison because a corporation told you that's what responsible people do? The answer determines what kind of future you're creating.